Hey guys, today I want to share my story. And I've tried to tell my story a few times. I've recorded it a couple times, and every time it's just, I don't know. I've been having a lot of limiting beliefs thinking nobody wants to hear it or cares. So this time I'm just gonna let it flow, not have a plan for it, just intentions. My intention is that it comes through from my heart and to serve the highest good, however it can be shared, however it needs to be shared. And it's really the story of how I got up to 400 pounds almost, dependent on pain meds, alcohol, severe anxiety and depression. And overall was just entirely miserable. And how this tremendous suffering led me to realizing that I created all of it, which led me down this journey of remembering that I am the creator of my reality. And if I created my own personal hell, then I could also create my own personal heaven. And I just had to learn how to remember. I had to remember how to do that. So we'll start at the beginning. I was born in August of 1992 in Joliet, Illinois, just like 30, 40 minutes from Chicago. And I was raised Catholic by my parents, but I went to a lot of different Christian churches. And so I really was like Catholic, but viewed myself more as Christian. Like I took all the stuff I liked from all of them and really had like my own, like a really strong faith and personal relationship with Jesus and God. And I knew there was a plan for me and that God loved me no matter what and all these things and forgives me no matter what and all this stuff. And so I had a really strong faith and foundation in that. And I actually grew up like I grew up slowly. Like I was very, I always wanted to just be a good boy. I wanted to make God happy. I wanted everyone to be happy. I loved really hard as a kid, and I guess I kind of always have. Um, but I just always wanted to do the right thing. That's all I ever wanted, and so I was raised a certain way, and wanted to always follow the way my religion said things were good and the way my parents said things were good. And so I was like, and I grew up attached kind of to like my mom's hip. Like I was with her all the time. My dad was running his own business and he was working all the time. Like sometimes he even slept overnight at his business because he just had so much work to do, and he was obviously very stressed and was dealing with difficult times when I was young and things like that as he was trying to provide, And so I was with my mom a lot, and so she kind of played both roles for me. And I kind of had like a best friend who ended up being, I realized, was like a male role model for me growing up, even though we were the same age. And, but, yeah, things were pretty normal for a while, until I was like 7, 8 years old. And my cousin's mom was sick, and she was a single mom, a divorced mom, and she had cancer, and she passed away. And so my cousins actually moved in with me and my little sister. And so then we went from like 2 kids to 4 kids, and one of them was a teenager, and they were used to being on their own and all this stuff. And obviously we accepted them and loved them as brother and sister, and they still are to me to this day. But that was a huge shift for our family. And then we moved away from my childhood home when we were 10 to a bigger house. And we only moved maybe like 15 minutes away, but like I left behind like my best friend who lived down the street, and so that was a whole shift again. And then when I was 14, my uncle, who was 43, he died and passed away, and that just absolutely crushed my mother and my grandparents and my uncle. It really, and my little sister, and just, I mean, having both of those deaths, my Aunt Elaine and then my Uncle Scott, losing them, and I felt like even at 8 years old, like I remember my response to like my cousins moving in and them losing their mother was like, I just wanted to be there for them. I wanted to be strong for them, and like I could feel how sad they were, and then with my uncle passing away, trying to be strong for my mom and my grandparents, and really just for everyone. I always took on everything. I always took on all the burdens, everyone else's feelings, because the way that I was raised was, we need to serve others. And it's true, we do need to serve others. But we need to do it in a balanced way, right? But I didn't know how to do that when I was young. And so I took on the burden of trying to make sure everyone else was okay, even at a young age. And that's just what ended up happening. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but it's what ended up happening. And I didn't know how to express my own emotions and things like that. I thought I was being strong as a man, keeping it to myself, and making sure everyone else was okay before making sure I was okay. And so anyway, I very much felt like a loner in high school. I had a best friend in middle school, but he moved away right at the start of high school, and then I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't understand energies at all. I didn't understand we felt each other's energies and emotions. That was all just something that was sort of just happening, and I didn't realize I was like overwhelmed by being around everyone. I didn't know how to be myself. And I'd always end up like mirroring or like kind of copying like people's energies or behaviors. And I felt very strange and uncomfortable and inauthentic and didn't know how to be myself. And so I kind of just kept to myself for the most part. And, but in my youth group and with my faith, I was really able to like be myself and be a leader, and maybe it's just because I felt comfortable that they viewed life kind of the same way I did. Like they were very open and loving, and like loved Jesus and God, and that was important to them. And I didn't know how to do that at high school though, and it was a big high school with like over 2,000 people and stuff, so it was just very overwhelming. So yeah, I had this strong faith, and honestly, I mean, life, besides, a couple of really difficult events, a few difficult events, life, I was pretty happy growing up. But when I was 18, 19, or really when I was like 17, 18, I kind of had like my first major heartbreak. And after that, I actually just started like questioning my faith, because like things sort of didn't make sense. Like I didn't have a passion for any type of work in the world or any type of career. I never had a relationship with a woman or anything like that. Well, a girl at that time, a teenager. But I very much felt like small and insignificant, and kind of like things weren't really working out. And really, I started to, after that heartbreak, I started to question my faith a little bit, because I was also starting to look out into the world, and see, I saw a lot of Christians who were very judgmental and very opinionated, and they were really pushing this idea of a very judgmental and condemning God. And I kind of held the belief in hell, kind of like, but it never really felt right to me. And then seeing all these Christians and the hypocrisies everywhere and different things come out, different conspiracies, and even stuff about like the Catholic Church. And then, of course, the whole thing with like priests and pastors and molesting children and stuff like that. I mean, there was just a lot of things that were coming up. I was like, do these people even follow Jesus? Like, do they listen to this guy? I don't know. But a lot of things were coming up, and I started to look more at like the contradictions of the Bible, different things that didn't add up, that didn't make sense. Like, are we really supposed to take the entire Bible literally and, think like, yeah, I mean, there's places where they say, like, when they talk about, a man lying with another man as an abomination. That's the same book that says, like, it's evil to, like, eat shrimp. It's a sin to eat shrimp. And so I'm like, or shellfish. And so I'm like, is it equally bad if you're gay and eat shrimp? I don't I'm like, I don't know. These were just things. And obviously homophobia, and that was a time when, like, we were having big talks on the rights of like same-sex marriage and stuff like that, and so these were some things that came up. Even certain Christian ideas that put men above women, that type of thing never sat right. And then, of course, the idea that Jesus, what he said about God was that God is all loving and all merciful. All, to me, always it meant like all, like always, like 100%. Always loving, always merciful. And yet to also believe that anyone who doesn't confess and believe in Jesus as Lord and Savior is going to go to hell. Not just the most, evil people necessarily, right? The people who do the most evil things, but also people who just don't believe that are going to hell, even if they're great people, even if they're really good and loving people. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. How can we believe in a God that judges and condemns someone for this little blip of time? I mean, you get 80 years here if you're lucky. And for this insignificant blip of time in eternity, you are judged and condemned for your belief or disbelief. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. It didn't seem like we were talking about the same God that Jesus was talking about. And you're a Christian after all, right? Are we going to listen to what Jesus said? Or are we going to listen to what these other people who weren't Jesus, what they said, or whatever, And of course, Jesus never said, bow down and worship me. Jesus never said, I am God and no one else is like me. He never said that, ever, And so all these things didn't sit right. It didn't sit right, and so my faith wavered. And when my faith wavered, anxiety crept in because I started to really question everything. And like I said, I had no real direction. I had no passion or purpose or mission. I didn't have my faith anymore. I felt very alone. I didn't have like someone who just understood me and understood what I was going through at that time at all. I didn't have anyone I could connect with who really could see, who knew what I was going through. And so I didn't have a role model for what I was going through. And so I just got very confused. And I started to look at everyone else around me and try to be like them, because I'm like, I don't know what to do. Then I'm becoming an adult, and there's all these responsibilities and expectations. And I was expected to go to college because I was such a good student. And so I went to college, but I didn't have anything that I was really passionate about or excited about. And so I just picked something and then just got a degree in it, and then didn't want to do it. Didn't want to work in that field. And then, so at this point in my life, I want to talk about my issues with weight and self-image, because that was always a thing. something my mom dealt with, something my grandma dealt with. It was, passed down from generations and stuff. And because I grew up with, like attached to my mom the whole time, like I took on a lot of her beliefs and a lot of her ways of thinking, especially about herself, her body. And I felt I sort of took on limiting beliefs with that, thinking like, oh, my genetics are bad. I got my mom's genes. I got these genes that say my metabolism's just naturally slow, that type of thing. Like there's just something naturally wrong with the way I was made. And so I was always a little bit bigger. Just like really like I grew up mentally, or like I was more naive and innocent. Took me a while to like grow up and even be okay with like ideas of like sex. Oh, I had like sexual shame, of course, because growing up Christian and all that stuff. I mean, we all do, right? We all got that shit. Most of us did, anyway. But but just growing up in all areas, and like I didn't hit a growth spurt until I was like halfway through my sophomore year of high school. I was like 5'2" and a little chubby for like 2 years there, and so I was just always very self-conscious, and I always had these beliefs that like it was super hard to lose weight. I had to be perfect if I wanted to lose weight, and all these things. And so once I sort of lost my way, I sort of lost my natural alignment, because I didn't have that trust that everything was working out for me. And so I was in my head more and not just following my heart like I was when I was had a stronger faith. And so college kind of took me a lot out of alignment. I was doing a lot of things that didn't feel right to me. And then got into my first relationship kind of out of desperation, because I'd never been in one, at like 21, 22 years old, somewhere around there. Ended up being with her for almost 10 years and married for the last 3 of those years. And from the start of that relationship, there were red flags, but I didn't know that. It's like, this is what love is, because I'd never experienced love. And obviously, like, not in that type of relationship. And I didn't know how to love myself, and she didn't know how to love herself. And we both got into it kind of both just being desperate for a relationship. And, but obviously we were like good friends, but it wasn't like a romantic or like a relationship that like our passions and purpose aligned at all. Like, neither of us had a passion or a purpose. We didn't know what we wanted to do with our life at all, And so you just go on, and the further I go down this journey, the further I get away from my truth and what would actually be fulfilling for me. And I didn't look at it this way, obviously, at the time. I just looked at it as, well, this seems logical. Like, after being together for a couple of years and her moving to Illinois, because, oh yeah, she's from North Carolina. So it's like 1,000 miles away. And so she moves here, and then things aren't great, but they're good enough, I guess. And my family accepts her, and her family accepts me. I guess that means we're really good together, and things are great, and everybody thinks everything's great. And in reality, everything was not that great. It was just, it was good enough at the time. It was enjoyable sometimes. It wasn't bad. We weren't like super abusive. I mean, we fought, but not like really terribly or anything. And really, we kind of just like avoided certain things, to be honest. We avoided ourselves, and we were codependent in a lot of ways. And yeah. And so eventually I start working for my dad after a few years after college, because I don't know what else to do. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. Thought maybe I could help him, but I don't really care for the line of work that he does. It's not really my thing. And at the time, nothing was really my thing, so I didn't know what the fuck to do. I was like, this seems like the best opportunity at the time, at the moment. Maybe I can help my dad be a little less stressed and a little happier. And of course, because I'm going into it with that mentality, the exact opposite is what happened. And but just started getting more and more miserable. And I should also mention that I started to have chronic pain um, after getting into that relationship, and I actually lived down in North Carolina with her, and to get to know her family for like 6 7 months early in the relationship before she moved back to Illinois with me, and um, and so I stayed there, and I ended up gaining like 40 50 pounds. So I was around 300 pounds around that time when I came back home, and then I started working for my dad, and I'd had this chronic pain start in my back, and I go and I do all the tests, and nothing's ever really wrong. There's nothing wrong with my spine. It's just really freaking painful, and so I start working for my dad, and of course this situation isn't really aligned because it's not where I want to be really, especially once I started working there and realized I really didn't want to do this work, after maybe a handful of months, but I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, I guess this is as good as it gets at the moment. And so, I keep working and my pain gets worse and I gain more weight. And eventually, I start antidepressants because mentally I'm still dealing with lots of anxiety and sometimes depression. And although I wasn't really too aware even of my depression at the time, more just the anxiety and the pain. And eventually then I'm getting like injections in my back to try and get it, like maybe it's inflammation, maybe the injection will make it feel better. That doesn't really help. Eventually I start pain meds, and those do make me feel better while they're kicked in, while they're working. But even then they, kind of affect your mental state. You're a little bit more tired, although at the same time it's better because you're more relaxed, actually, if you think about state of being wise. But obviously still not good, not the healthiest option for taking care of yourself, no question about that. Um, I was already drinking a lot before this. Really, I started drinking a lot probably when I was like 22. And that was kind of helping me deal with pain and also loneliness, because I would play Call of Duty and have like 8 drinks and have a lot of fun. But then I'm, waking up not feeling good. I'm eating more, I'm drinking more calories, I'm gaining more weight, I'm going through lots of pain, inflammation in the body, obviously, because of my lifestyle. And so then I start these pain meds. And so I'm taking pain meds. And at first, things are going fine with them. After a while, tolerance builds up, gotta up the dosage. After a while, tolerance builds up again, up the dosage. Finally, you get to a point where it's like you've kind of maxed out your dosage for what's wrong with you, supposedly wrong with you, and the whole time I'm on antidepressants, pain meds. And when I don't have pain meds, or if I run out of them early before the next month and the next prescription, I'm drinking again. And this cycle is just going on. And there's no direction still for life. There's no passion for anything. It's just, I'm really just numbing myself. I'm distracting myself. I'm trying to find fun things to do. The only thing I really like to do is get drunk and play Call of Duty, or sit and be on pain meds and just be feeling good from that outside external source, giving my power to that, giving my power to alcohol, giving my power to food, giving my power to these distractions, social media, video games, movies, TV, whatever. All the while just being in this kind of like, it's not like our relationship was bad, but it wasn't really good either, and we didn't really inspire each other. We didn't bring out the best in each other. And that's just the truth, And I just got worse and worse and worse. And eventually, I'm 27, 28 years old, and I'm, over 360 pounds at this point, and my back is in so much pain all the time, and I don't get very much movement. I can walk maybe 5 10 minutes before I need to go lay down and rest, because my back is so tight and restricted and painful. And I'm really starting to hate myself. because I feel like I've ruined my life. And I still remember how much I used to love life when I was younger. But right now, nothing makes sense. And I hate myself. And then I start getting these spasms in my back, and I hate my body. And I'm scared in my body. My body doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe with me because I'm not taking care of it. I don't know how. And I start getting these spasms that would lock in, these cramps that would lock in for like a week or two at a time. And I'm bedridden and I can't move at all. I can barely go to the bathroom. And I have to just lie on my back for as long until it releases again. And the whole time I'm just terrified and in my mind feeling so much anxiety, and I can't work anymore. I can't do anything really anymore. And even when one of those back spasms isn't there and locked in, I'm terrified of it happening all the time. And the whole time I am just shitting on myself, allowing that mind to just shit on me, reflecting how awful everything is, how terrible everything is, until finally I'm like over 380 pounds and I'm on vacation. I think this was early 2021, maybe, something like that. And yeah. And I'm visiting the in-laws for like Christmas, I think, but later in January. And one of those spasms kicks in like 2 days before we're set to leave. And we have a 17-hour drive, two-day 17-hour drive back. And I'm out of pain meds. And the anxiety the night before we're set to leave is just through the roof. And I wake up in the morning like startled awake in fear and in a tremendous amount of pain. And that was the first time I ever had like a real consideration of suicide. Like the only way out of this is if I go end it. Or I have to change everything. I don't know what else to do, because whatever I'm doing now is just wrong. It's not, my suffering is far too great. I don't understand anything. I don't get it. And thankfully, that was the first time I really chose myself, I think, in my entire life, or really understood what that even meant. And I made it through the drive home, and I started therapy right away because I knew my mind was so messed up. I couldn't even get on a diet. I didn't understand myself. I needed some type of guidance and help. And so I started therapy, and I did that for maybe 8 months. And that did help me a lot. She listened to me and didn't judge me and didn't shame me for my use of pain meds or alcohol or anything. She didn't make me feel bad about myself. And in fact, she taught me about being positively intentional, like intentionally positive. Because before, I was just so used to everyone always thinking of the worst case scenario and being very worried and anxious all the time and buying into like fear or limiting mindsets. And that was just what I thought life was. And so realizing that it was okay that I could be optimistic. And I thought it was wrong for me to be optimistic and hopeful. I didn't know, I just never even I was in such a low state of consciousness that I couldn't even see that as a possibility. And so I started to lose a little bit of weight. I lost maybe 40, 50 pounds. And I was finally able to start working remotely again to make some money and do something. And, but after like 6, 7 months of that, my anxiety is just through the roof and still nothing else seems to be getting better, And finally, in just tremendous frustration, I call out to, I don't know that anything's listening, but I just call out is this all my life is? Just pain and anxiety and depression and just continuous cycles of that? Is that all my life is? Is that all life is? Because I don't understand myself. I don't understand life. I don't know anything. I really don't. And I, for real, like, humbled myself in that moment. Like, I don't care about being right anymore. I don't know what's right. Please help me, you know? And I asked for help. And 3 days later, God brought me the exact message I needed to wake up, to realize that I am connected to everything and everyone. And it was actually a Wayne Dyer seminar on the power of intention. And I started listening to it, and he starts talking about God and source energy and love. And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to keep listening because I'll listen to anything at this point that might help. And the way that he was explaining things and the wisdom that he shared, it was like a remembering. My heart was just like opening. And he wasn't speaking in a religious way. It was like, here's like what quantum physics is showing us. And here's this just beautiful wisdom and logic of love of the heart. And it just feels good to think like that, to believe that. And it makes sense. And it's like, where has this been all my life? And my heart started opening. I listened to this seminar. It was like 6 hours of it. And over a few days, I watched all of it. And then I watched all of it again. And my heart was just, I'm not going to say blown open. It just like blossomed open, because it was like, I actually am connected to something bigger than myself. I'm connected to everyone and everything, because everything comes from the same energy source. It all comes from the same unified singular energy source. That's what everything comes from, and we're all part of it. And then I started to learn about consciousness and how consciousness is creating reality. And this was all in 2022. So that's when my awakening started, was in April of 2022. And so my heart blossomed open, and for like 3 weeks, I was in what's known as like a Satori state, which was just like this blissful state where you wake up happy just to be alive and everything feels so good and you're just excited about life again. And then it all came crashing down again, because I was still programmed. The mind was still programmed to be very harsh and judgmental of myself. Like, it still didn't like me. It still didn't like life. It still didn't trust all this. And whenever I tried to like tell people like, oh, like, they gotta listen to it, like, this is mind-blowing stuff, this is amazing stuff, nobody cared. And it was like, all right, well, this is all very depressing again. And so back down into depression after those few weeks. But I did have a passion for life sparked from that, because I knew that state of consciousness existed. And it gave me my faith back in something higher than myself, something bigger than myself. And maybe this all wasn't just for no fucking reason anymore. Maybe there was great purpose to all of this. And so I just started to kind of obsessively study and research and listen to great spiritual teachers like Wayne Dyer and Alan Watts and Eckhart Tolle and Ram Dass, and even eventually started listening to like some New Earth stuff, and things like Dolores Cannon and Neville Goddard, and then got into some more modern day spiritual teachers who are sort of like in their prime and thriving right now. And I really just wanted to simplify things. So I was just, at a certain point, I started to like just sort of ask questions, the things I wanted to understand. I want to understand consciousness better. I want to understand energy better. I want to understand reality creation better. I want to understand all these different things. How do I create a beautiful reality if I'm the creator? Because through this process of waking up and realizing it's all consciousness, I realized that I was the creator of all of the conditions that I hated from my old life, from the way that I was. I know that I created it. And I could see very clearly that the way that I thought about myself, the way I perceived myself, the limiting beliefs I had about myself, the thoughts I put lots of focus and emotion into that didn't feel good, it created all of the conditions of my life. It created the conditions for me to balloon up to almost 400 pounds. It had me identified as, an alcoholic or a pain pill addict or whatever, had me identified in all these different ways with all these different beliefs that, life is really hard, that it's all, and nothing's really working out. There's no plan for me, blah, blah, blah. All these different beliefs that were really detrimental to who I really am, to my true self. And because I didn't really have any passion or purpose or direction, my suffering just exponentially got worse and worse and worse until it triggered me into awakening, because I finally got sick enough of the suffering. The suffering got so fucking bad. I was in more pain than I ever thought I could experience. And that's what eventually got me sick enough of the suffering, tired enough of the suffering, to finally humble myself, humble my ego, so that I could receive finally some truth. Because if you ask, you shall receive. And that has been proven to me time after time after time. And so as I was saying, I started to realize at a certain point, if I asked a question and I wanted to know the answer to it, I wanted a good, loving perspective to hold for myself that I could shift to. That answer would come to me within a day or two, sometimes less. The exact answer I needed. It would just come to me, whether through like a video message on social media, YouTube. It would be reflected to me in my own life. Someone would just randomly say it to me or something. There were a lot of different ways that it came. Sometimes it just came as a download, as a thought, like, oh, what about this? Oh yeah, that really makes me feel good. That's a new belief I want to take on. And I realized pretty quickly, we always have the choice between love or fear. That perception is our power, that there's no reason you can't take a limiting belief that doesn't feel good to believe and change it to one that does feel good. And when I finally realized all this, and I started to see like, oh, I need to heal my perception of reality. I need to heal my perception of myself. And I have every right to perceive reality as I choose to, what feels good to me. And that's my truth. My highest good, my greatest truths feel amazing to believe in. They feel like love. They feel expansive. They feel limitless. They feel empowering. They feel good. They feel good. And all the beliefs that I hold that feel like shit to believe, I can let every fucking one of them go. And so I started to do shadow work. And I started to learn more about the I am presence, the awareness of God, that what sees through my eyes is what sees through your eyes, is what sees through all eyes. That's the I am presence. It's the awareness of knowing I exist. Every being in existence has the same I am presence. It's the one self, one consciousness. We are the creators of our reality. And what we deeply believe to be true is what's reflected back to us in our experience. So simplifying things, realizing that my emotions are intelligently designed, realizing that there is a higher state of consciousness that is available, and it comes through total self-acceptance, learning to love yourself unconditionally, and then reprogramming the mind to listen to the wisdom of the heart, to listen to the heart. And this is what we call heart-based consciousness, and also heart-mind coherence, to create balance within ourselves, and to balance the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and to balance the lower three chakras so that you can feel safe in the world. You can let go of the fear of existing. You can let go of guilt, which is really just other people's shame. And then you can let go of your own shame, which resides in the solar plexus, because you don't need to be ashamed of anything. You didn't know who you were. And I realized I just didn't know who the fuck I was. But my soul knows who I am. My heart knows who I am. And the more that I started to align with beautiful perspectives, I was doing deep shadow work, I sat with myself for over 2 years, deep sitting with myself, always being aware of what's going on within me, what thoughts and beliefs are producing these emotions, what thoughts and beliefs are producing these emotions, going through dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, fucking over and over and over again. And it was brutal, honestly. It was a lot of work. It was very hard, and I didn't know how to express this to people. Nobody knew what I was going through. But this is what allowed me to change my life, to go from being obese and dependent on all these things and looking for comfort outside myself and safety outside myself and love outside myself, and realizing it's all within. It is all within. And that I have complete control and autonomy over myself and my experience based on how I choose to perceive everything. And I can use the processor of fear, or I can use the processor of love. And I choose love. I started to just choose love. Like, fuck what everyone else thinks. Fuck what society thinks is a reasonable perspective. If it doesn't align with my heart, I don't believe it. It's not my truth. Meanwhile, if there's something that I want to believe in that makes me feel so fucking good about myself and about reality and about the world and about love and about others and about everything, if there's something that I can believe in that feels like that, I'm doing it. I don't care if anyone else tells me I'm crazy. I don't care. Because this is my experience. Not yours, not theirs, not anyone else's. It's my experience. And this is the mentality of authenticity in the age of Aquarius right now, in this shift of consciousness that we've made, the shift in consciousness that the earth has made, going from the third frequency to the fourth frequency. And now we have the opportunity, every single being here has the opportunity to embody heart-based consciousness, fourth density consciousness, and learn how to follow the alignment of your heart rather than always trying to figure everything out with your mind. Because that's what creates our resistance to what is, thinking we know better than what has happened or is going to happen. Thinking we know better. That's what causes suffering. Saying, that shouldn't have happened. That was wrong. That was bad. That shouldn't have, I don't like that. I hate that. I judge that. I regret that. I resent that. That's all ego. Because what happens always is for the highest good. Because we're not in control of external circumstances and outcomes. The highest good is 100% of the time always happening, because what is in control of the outcomes is source. Because source is always serving the highest good. The highest good is always served. Free will is always honored, including yours, because your free will and your highest good matter. And this whole process, going into immense suffering, realizing that I chose this life, I chose that experience. And I did it for a fucking reason. I did it so I could get here, so I could deliver this type of message, so that I could remember myself, so that I could wake up and remember who I am, because humanity needs to remember who they are. That is the way we end our suffering, is by remembering that we're all one, that everything we do that's not loving or honoring free will, that's all ego. It's misperception. It's misperception. Us not accepting what is, misperception. Us thinking things should be different, misperception. All suffering is misperception. All suffering is psychological. And we are the only ones who can choose to see things differently, to perceive things differently. We're the only ones who can open ourselves up. We're the only ones who can humble our egos, our ego mind identity. And when we humble ourselves and we genuinely ask for truth, because we're finally tired of our own suffering and we finally want to learn how to love ourselves and align with our highest good, and then create our dream life from a place of authenticity. Authenticity is your key to bringing forth your gifts, your talents, your heart's greatest expression. to make your heart manifest in the world. Because your heart is a direct reflection of your soul's blueprint, which is a direct reflection of what your higher self wants for you, what God wants for you. And it's all right here. It's written on your heart. It is written on your heart, but we can only get there when we humble the mind, because the mind puts up mental blocks to the heart. It says, no, my heart's kind of pulling me this way, but logically I should do this. Fuck that noise. That's garbage. That's a garbage perspective. It doesn't help. I mean, believe it if you want to, but I think it's garbage. Always do what your heart is telling you is right. Always listen to your heart. Who gives a fuck what other people think? Who gives a fuck about society's standards or expectations? Everybody's trying to remember who they are. Hardly anybody knows. And so everybody's suffering and everybody's going crazy and everybody thinks the world's coming to an end, or it's never going to get better, or that we have no control, that we're slaves to the system, that we're slaves to the government. We are in control. But we will only create the society and the world that we want to see here. We will only create the way of living that we would love to see for humanity if we get back in touch with our hearts. It's the only way. It's the only way. And the beautiful thing is, the best way you can serve humanity, is by healing your perception, by coming back into your heart, opening your heart up, because through this process, I have found such a deep love and admiration and reverence for humanity, for Mother Earth, for all that is, and for myself. And that's so empowering. And it feels so good to believe in. Like finally I can breathe. And I can slow down. And know that it's safe to exist. And life can be easy. It doesn't have to be hard all the time. I can be soft with myself. I can be forgiving with myself. I can be understanding with myself. I can be compassionate with myself instead of being so hard on myself all the time. Expecting so much from myself before I'm ready to handle it. Trying to be further ahead than I am. Not being okay with how things are going or what is. Always trying to think, how could I make it better? Or how could it have been better? That way of thinking just leads to misery. It just does. The truth is, we're free beings in this universe with free will. But we only feel that way when we claim it. As long as we give our power to things outside of us. As long as we think we're victims to anything outside of us, we are. And the only way out of that victimhood, out of that ego mindset, is through the heart, through finding your truth, learning discernment, evolving spiritually, expanding your consciousness, expanding your frequency. And then you become the example for others. And then you can actually help others, is once you have helped yourself. We can't truly help or love anyone unconditionally until we have learned to give it to ourselves. I feel complete in this transmission. Thank you. I hope you have a very blessed day, and I love you.